The game that surprised me the most and made me the happiest during this State of Play event was definitely God of War, Laufey. Honestly, I was expecting to see something new from God of War, but seeing an adventure of this scale was completely different from what I expected. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into God of War, Laufey. What could happen in the story, what this new realm called Everywhen actually means, how Faye's gameplay differs from Kratos's, whether we'll see new mythologies, and whether this game can truly capture the God of War feeling. Let's break down all the details together. When you think of God of War, Kratos is naturally the first character that comes to mind. For years, this series has revolved around Kratos' rage, pain, regrets, and his father-son journey. But this time, Kratos is not at the center. Instead, the focus is on his wife Faye, whose real name is Laufey. When this idea was first revealed, it sounded a little strange. You immediately start asking yourself, can there really be a God of War game without Kratos? But after seeing the footage, one thing becomes clear. Sony and Santa Monica are not making a small side story here. They're creating a truly ambitious and large-scale adventure. My first impression was this. This game doesn't start like a traditional God of War game. The heavy footsteps of Kratos, the brutal impact of the Leviathan axe, and that crushing energy that overwhelms enemies aren't present in the same way. Instead, we're seeing something faster, more agile, more fantastical, and very different. Faye's combat style looks completely separate from Kratos's. It's more athletic, more fluid, more magic-focused, and at times it even gives off a fast-paced action vibe similar to Devil May Cry. It feels unusual at first, but it also breathes fresh life into the series. One of the most interesting details about the story is that it begins after Faye's death. At the beginning of God of War 2018, Kratos and Atreus set out to scatter Faye's ashes from the highest peak in the realms. We never truly met Faye in that game, but we felt her presence everywhere. She was at the center of Kratos' transformation, Atreus' identity, and the entire meaning of the journey. Now, for the first time, we're getting a story told through her own eyes. I think that's a very bold decision. Up until now, Faye has been portrayed almost like a legend. We knew her as the woman Kratos loved, the mother of Atreus, and a mysterious figure from the Jotnar. But we never saw her fight, make difficult choices, experience fear, express anger, or struggle on her own. This game has the opportunity to show Faye not just as Kratos' wife, but as a powerful character with her own story. If they pull that off, the God of War universe will become much deeper. The setting of the game might be the biggest mystery of all. This afterlife realm known as Everywhen doesn't seem to be limited to Norse mythology. It appears to be a place where gods go after death, where different mythologies collide, and where strange creatures and belief systems exist side by side. That concept has enormous potential. After all, God of War successfully reinvented itself by moving from Greek mythology to Norse mythology. Now, instead of focusing on a single mythology, multiple mythologies may coexist within the same world. That makes the game both exciting and risky. One of God of War's greatest strengths has always been that mythology wasn't treated as mere background decoration. Zeus, Odin, Thor, Balder, and Freya weren't just names, they were essential parts of the story. If Everyone simply becomes a place where the game says, look, there are other gods here too, it could feel shallow. But if this world is written well, it could dramatically expand the scope of the God of War universe. As for Faye's gameplay, we're clearly seeing a very different rhythm. Kratos was heavier, stronger, and more overwhelming. Every hit felt powerful when you played as him. Faye moves faster, performs aerial combos, uses a magical sword, and navigates the battlefield with much more agility. I think that change makes sense. Making Faye into a female version of Kratos would have been a huge mistake. She needed her own combat identity. That said, I do have one concern. God of War has never just been about great action. It's also about impact, weight, and a darker tone. Some of the scenes shown so far feel much more colorful, much more fantastical, and at times almost too different. When I first watched the trailer, I honestly found myself asking, is this really God of War? Some of the creature designs and parts of the atmosphere feel a bit removed from the God of War world we're used to. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means the developers still need to convince players. And I think that will be the game's biggest challenge. Convincing people to invest in Faye's story. Kratos is such a powerful protagonist that any God of War game without him will automatically spark debate. A lot of players are going to say, I want to play as Kratos. That's completely understandable. I want to play as Kratos too. But at the same time, you can't keep using the same character and the same formula forever. Sometimes you need to take risks to expand the universe. Whether that risk pays off or not will depend entirely on the story. If Faye's journey is presented as nothing more than the story of Kratos' wife, it will feel weak. But if her personal struggles, fears, past experiences, and decisions are explored in a meaningful way, this game could become something truly special. After all, Faye was the unseen heart of God of War 2018. Now we finally have the opportunity to see that heart for ourselves. Another important question is where exactly this game fits within the timeline. It doesn't seem like a simple prequel. Faye is already dead, yet the story appears to continue alongside the main timeline in some way. That's fascinating. Rather than being a straightforward story from the past, it could be introducing an entirely new layer to the God of War universe through the concept of existence after death that could indirectly connect back to the stories of Kratos and Atreus. I'm also very curious about how much Kratos and Atreus will actually appear in the game. They probably won't be the main characters, but I imagine their influence will remain at the emotional core of the story. Faye thinking about Kratos and Atreus, understanding their journey, or encountering something that could affect their destiny from her side of existence could create some incredibly powerful moments. One of God of War's greatest strengths has always been giving emotional weight to its action, and I expect the same here. From a visual standpoint, the game looks fantastic. Being built exclusively for PlayStation 5 is evident in the environmental detail, character models, and animations. Faye's movement, facial animations, and cinematic transitions all look incredibly polished. Santa Monica has already proven itself in this area. After God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, I have a hard time imagining this team delivering anything less than top-tier technical quality. But technical quality alone isn't enough. God of War players want more than beautiful graphics. They want a powerful story, memorable characters, unforgettable boss fights, well-written dialogue, and a compelling sense of exploration. The success of Laufey won't depend solely on the idea that Faye fights really fast. The game needs to add something meaningful to the God of War universe. Otherwise, it risks becoming a visually impressive game that lacks the soul of the franchise. One of the things I like most is that the game doesn't portray Faye as a passive character. In God of War 2018, she was always presented as wise, mysterious, and seemingly several steps ahead of everyone else. Here, we see a Faye who fights, struggles, takes risks, and makes her own decisions. That's important. It transforms her from a memory in Kratos' past into a hero in her own right. Of course, they need to get the tone of the story exactly right. If they make Faye too lighthearted, too comedic, or place her in a world that feels overly fantastical, the harsh emotional core of God of War could be lost. At the same time, it's natural for Faye to be more hopeful, more optimistic, and different from Kratos. The goal shouldn't be to make Faye resemble Kratos. The goal should be to make her strong enough to belong in the God of War universe. The possibility of seeing old gods within Everywhen is another thing that excites me. If this truly is the realm where gods go after death, we could potentially encounter traces of figures Kratos killed in the past. Zeus, Ares, Hades, or gods from entirely different mythologies. It would be incredible to see them again, but they shouldn't do it purely for fan service. If old gods return, they need to have a meaningful role in the story. That said, I don't think this game will lean too heavily on Greek mythology. My guess is that Santa Monica wants to expand the God of War universe into something much larger. Different mythologies, different afterlife realms, different divine systems, these ideas could open up enormous possibilities for the future of the franchise. This game could even serve as a bridge to future God of War projects. I completely agree with Enos' reaction in the video. What we saw feels strange at first, but it also makes you incredibly curious. My initial reaction was the same. I thought, this doesn't feel like God of War. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this difference seems intentional. They're not trying to make another Kratos game. They're trying to create a different God of War experience that belongs to Faye. That's why I'm approaching this game with caution, but also with a lot of excitement. Part of me misses Kratos' heavy, dark, and brutal world. But another part of me genuinely wants to experience Faye's story. There are still so many unanswered questions in the God of War universe. Who was Faye really? What did she know? Why did she seem to have everything planned in advance? How did she play such a massive role in the destiny of Kratos and Atreus? This game could finally answer some of those questions. Ultimately, God of War. Laufey doesn't feel like a simple spin-off to me. If it succeeds, it could transform God of War from being solely Kratos' story into a much larger mythological universe. But if it fails, people will start saying, this franchise doesn't work without Kratos. The risk is enormous, but so is the potential. My expectation is this. Santa Monica knows this game looks unusual. They know people are going to react strongly at first. But if they truly believe in the story they're telling, that risk could result in something very different and very special. Right now, I'm still a little surprised, a little cautious, but definitely very excited. Because experiencing a new mythological adventure through Faye's eyes in a universe like God of War could be unforgettable if it's done right. So, what do you think about God of War, Laufey? Are you excited to play as Faye instead of Kratos? Or do you think Kratos should still remain at the center of the franchise? Do you think the concept of Everywhen, the inclusion of multiple mythologies, and Faye's faster, more agile combat style are good for the series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue talking about God of War, Laufey, as more details are revealed. That's all from me for now. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.